Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Dennis, and for 22 years I was married to a woman I love, but she cheated and left me for a younger man. When I told our daughter that her mother had been involved with someone else, what I didn't expect was for her to blame me. She sided with her mother almost immediately. It felt like someone ripped my heart out and crushed it right in front of me. What came after the betrayal? I don't think they saw it coming. And to be honest, neither did I. When I look back at the early years of my marriage with Carolyn, it honestly felt like we were on the same page about everything. Right from the start, we had serious conversations about what kind of life we wanted. We agreed that before bringing any kids into the world, we needed to get ourselves settled professionally. That was important to both of us. Carolyn was climbing the ranks in her own corporate role, and I had just landed a job as a manager at a local firm. It made sense to hold off on starting a family while we built our careers and saved some money. Those first 5 years were smooth. We worked hard, came home tired, but still found time to talk, laugh, and plan. We set goals together and eventually bought a modest home in a quiet neighborhood. Around our 5th year, Carolyn got pregnant. I got the news, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. We were going to be parents. When our daughter was born, everything changed in the way you'd expect. Carolyn decided not to return to work after maternity leave. She said she wanted to focus on raising our daughter full-time. I supported her 100%. We talked about it together and agreed it was the best decision for our family. My salary at the time was enough to take care of all our needs. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. The bills were paid, the fridge was full, and there was always a roof over our heads. We weren't perfect, but we had mutual respect, and most importantly, we had shared goals. Everything seemed steady. As the years went by, life got more expensive, and things weren't what they used to be. I felt the weight of it more and more each month. I knew if I wanted my wife and daughter to live comfortably, I had to step up. That meant putting in extra hours at the office, chasing promotions, and saying yes to more responsibility at work, even when it came at a personal cost. At first, it felt like the right thing to do. I'd leave early, get home late. I'd walk through the door, drop my bag, maybe give my wife a quick kiss on the forehead, and then head straight for the shower just to stay awake long enough to eat dinner. There were nights I couldn't even bring myself to talk because I was completely burned out. But through all of that, in my mind, I thought, this is for us. One night, I stepped through the front door, loosened my tie, and found Carolyn sitting at the kitchen table with her tea. The house was quiet. Our daughter was already asleep upstairs, and the only light was the soft glow from the range hood. I could have mumbled a tired, "How was your day?" and gone straight to bed, but I stopped, slid into the chair across from her, and decided to have a quick conversation with her. I needed her to know why I was doing all of this. I told her straight, I'm not working this hard because I want to. I'm out here grinding so that you and our daughter never lack anything. I didn't know what to expect, but she surprised me when she told me she understood. She called me the best husband and father in the world. She said she was proud of me and that she appreciated everything I was doing. Hearing that, it gave me some peace. It reminded me why I was pushing myself so hard. Even with how stretched I was, I never missed the important dates. I never forgot a birthday. I never let an anniversary slide by. If it were our daughter's school play, I'd move meetings, rearrange schedules, whatever it took to be there. I knew those moments mattered. They were the small pieces that still kept us connected as a family. I may not have had energy every night to sit and talk, but when it counted, I showed up. When our daughter entered her teenage years, things were supposed to get easier, not harder. By then, I had already secured her college fund. We had a solid emergency savings account and a few good investments that gave us peace of mind. Financially, we were in a good place. And with those goals out of the way, I started to slow down. I wasn't chasing promotions or working overtime like I used to. I finally had the time to just be home, to breathe, to spend more time with my wife. I thought it would bring us closer again. I was wrong. The more time I spent at home, the more I noticed something was off with Carolyn. She wasn't the same woman I married. There was a coldness in her. a sharpness in her tone. I could feel it in the little things. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but as the days went on, it became clear that it wasn't about one bad day. It was a pattern. She would lie about little things for no reason, avoid basic conversations, and twist my words to make me look like I was the one causing problems. It was confusing because we built a life together. Sure, we had disagreements and argued like any married couple, but we always sort things out, and I never disrespected her. We always found a way back to each other. That's why it hurt even more, because I couldn't figure out what I had done so wrong to deserve the kind of disrespect she was giving me now. When I tried to talk to her about it, she wouldn't even let me finish a sentence. She'd cut me off and act like I was bothering her. I only wanted to understand. I thought we owed each other that much after 2 decades of marriage. But the more I reached out, the more she pulled away. It got to a point where I started questioning myself, wondering if maybe I was the problem or I had missed something. But one evening changed everything for me. I had just finished clearing a few emails in my home office when I noticed that Carolyn wasn't in the living room. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard faint laughter from the bedroom. I walked slowly down the hallway. The door was slightly ajar. That's when I saw her, sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone propped up, smiling and twirling her hair like a teenager. She was on a FaceTime call with a young man, as I guessed from a voice. They were basically flirting because the guy was teasing her, and she was blushing. I stood and listened for a while as he told her what he would do to her when next they met. I stepped in and said her name. She jolted like she'd been caught red-handed and ended the call. She then got angry, snapping at me. "Why are you creeping around like that? You always do this, just barge into things without warning." I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. I looked at her and asked, "Are you cheating on me?" She stared right back at me. "Yes," she said, "I am." My ears rang. For a moment, I tried to make sense of the words that had left her mouth so casually. Then she doubled down. "What did you expect, Dennis?" she said. "You were never here. You think I could live like that forever? You left me alone in this house for years while you buried yourself in work. I needed to feel something. I needed someone who made me feel alive." She was blaming me, as if I'd pushed her into someone else's arms. I didn't even know what to say. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. A few days later, through bits and pieces, I found out who he was, some younger guy she met online. Probably someone who flattered her ego, made her feel wanted, while I was too exhausted most nights to have long conversations. I wasn't even angry at the guy. I didn't know him. I was more hurt by the fact that she allowed it. She welcomed him into a space that was supposed to be ours. And the worst part? A piece of me still wanted to save the marriage. I couldn't just flip a switch and shut off 22 years. I kept thinking, maybe there's still a way back. I didn't even get the chance to figure out what I wanted before Carolyn made the choice for both of us. The next morning, she walked into the room and told me plainly, "I'm leaving. You'll get the divorce papers soon." It felt like I'd been punched in the chest by someone I thought would always protect me. I just sat there, quiet, because I honestly didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to stop her, to ask her if she was sure, to beg her to stay, and think about what we were throwing away. But another part of me, the more tired, broken part, didn't have the strength to fight anymore. I watched her move around the house, folding clothes into a suitcase. She had already made up her mind. So I made mine too. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead with someone who'd already walked out of the relationship emotionally long before she started packing her bags, physically, /. Still, I wasn't prepared for how heavy the silence would feel after she left. That emptiness sat with me for hours, then days. I finally decided to call my daughter. She was away at college, and I figured she deserved to hear the truth from me. So I told her everything. How I overheard her mother talking intimately with someone else, how I confronted her, and how she admitted to the affair without even flinching. I wasn't expecting my daughter's reaction to be what she did. She sided with her mother and said I had no right to be upset that I was never really around, that her mom deserved to feel wanted and happy. I was stunned. I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. All those years I worked long hours, skipped sleep, sacrificed rest and joy, just to make sure they had a roof over their heads, food in the fridge, and savings for the future. And she blamed me for why her mother cheated? I didn't even know how to respond to my daughter, who justified her mother's betrayal. That conversation left a deeper scar than the divorce papers ever could. So when the papers came, I didn't fight it. What was the point? The two people I spent my entire life working for had made it clear where they stood. I showed up in court. I didn't ask for custody. My daughter had already chosen who she wanted to stand beside. I just wanted it over. The court divided everything up. Most of the financial growth and success I had built over the years happened during the marriage, so Carolyn had legal rights to a chunk of it. We settled on a one-time alimony payment, something I insisted on, so I wouldn't have to stay financially tied to her for years. I paid it. It was a heavy amount, but it meant freedom. She didn't want the house either. She had already got herself a new one in some fancier neighborhood, likely with the excitement of her new life in mind. So I kept our old house. After the divorce, I didn't fall apart the way people might have expected. But that doesn't mean I wasn't hurting. Inside, I was a mess. My wife of over 2 decades is gone, and worse, my daughter had chosen to stand with her. That part broke me in ways I still can't fully explain. It felt like the life I'd spent years building had vanished overnight, and I was the only one standing in the rubble. To cope, I made a decision that since they were both gone, they were dead to me. I didn't want updates, I didn't want check-ins, and I needed distance. So I focused on what I knew, work. I threw myself back into the grind, not out of ambition, but out of necessity. The divorce settlement had eaten a chunk of my retirement savings, so I had to get back on my feet financially. I started taking on more private projects. For the first time in years, I wasn't working for anyone else. I was doing it for me. That quiet focus became my therapy. About 6 months after the divorce, I got a message from my daughter. She reached out like nothing had happened, like she was easing into a normal father-daughter conversation. But I wasn't ready for that. I'd spent half a year stitching myself back together, only to hear from the same person who'd once told me I was to blame for her mother's betrayal. So I didn't play along. I responded bluntly. I asked her to tell me exactly why she was reaching out. She wasn't expecting that. I could tell from the silence that followed. I had never spoken to her like that before. Never once in her life had I shut her down or made her feel unwelcome. That one message must have landed hard, because she didn't reply after that. She respected the boundary I put up, and honestly, I appreciated that more than she probably knew. 3 months later, she tried again. This time it was different. Her message wasn't casual. It was honest. She said she'd been thinking about everything I had done for our family, how I worked myself to the bone, how I was never the absent father she had once believed I was. She apologized. She said she was sorry for taking her mother's side without question. That back then, she was too caught up in Carolyn's version of events to see what was really going on. She said conversations with people outside of our home helped her see things differently. And now, she felt ashamed for how she treated me. Reading those words, I won't lie, it touched my heart. I agreed to talk with her. I wasn't ready to just flip a switch and pretend nothing happened, but she was still my daughter. That connection didn't just disappear. Still, rebuilding wasn't easy. I was guarded. She understood. She didn't push. Over time, through our conversations, I started learning about what had been happening with Carolyn. Apparently, the money she walked away with didn't last. She spent like she were still married to a man working overtime to refill the account. Vacations, shopping, gifts, especially for that young man she left me for. My daughter said he convinced Carolyn to invest in some business idea he cooked up, and it failed. Now, she suspects her mother is broke or in debt even. I didn't celebrate when I heard that. There was no part of me that felt joy over her downfall. But I'll be honest, it reminded me that everything I did for those 22 years wasn't in vain. The money didn't just appear. The security we had wasn't luck. It was work, sacrifice, responsibility, and I carried it all on my back while she looked elsewhere for excitement. My daughter still visits her. I told her I won't stop her from keeping that relationship, but I made one thing clear. Whatever happens with her mother stays between them. I want no part of it. It had been a little over 2 years since the divorce when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't pick up, but something nudged me to answer. As soon as I heard the voice on the other end, I felt a cold wave move through me. It was Carolyn. She said my name like we were old friends. I didn't let her finish whatever she was about to say. I cut in and told her, plain and direct, "Don't ever call this number again." Then I hung up. But that didn't stop her. She called back again and again. I didn't answer. Instead, she left voicemails, long, rambling ones. She said things like, "I didn't know what I had. The grass wasn't greener." She said she was sorry and wanted to make things right, that she finally understood what I had been trying to build all those years. She even used the word regret, which she had never allowed to slip through her lips before. But I didn't care. I didn't want her apologies. I didn't want her explanations. I had already buried that chapter of my life and made peace with the pain. Picking up that call again would be like reopening a wound that had already scarred over. I wasn't interested in dragging myself back into that emotional mess. So I left every call unanswered and every message unread. It was my daughter who filled in the gaps later. She told me her mother was struggling. Apparently, the young guy Carolyn had run off with had vanished, but not before draining her of what was left of the settlement money and making off with some of her expensive jewelry. Her mother had been left alone, broke, and embarrassed. She told me she had warned her mother after the failed investment, but she was too stubborn to listen. Hearing that didn't make me feel joy. I didn't need closure from Carolyn. I gave it to myself the day I chose not to look back. I know a lot of people think closure comes from conversations or apologies, but in my case, it came from walking away and meaning it. It came from rebuilding myself without waiting for someone else to admit they broke me. And that, to me, is enough. Thank you for watching.